Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today is going to be a really unique video where we cover a ranked guide and tips on how to get consistent 4,000 plus damage. What we're going to do is we're going to cover what we hit live on stream, where we actually hit 4,800 and the early split. So we know that it's a mixed bag of players. Some are going to be Preds, Masters, some are going to be not so good at players, and we're going to highlight and cover as many tips as humanly possible. Now, the beauty here is we also have a gameplay with Alter where we had 4,900 damage. Now, that is in the revival mode, but I also want to point out as many tips as well and how this can lead into good ranked gameplay and some of those fundamentals that we always talk about. So let's backtrack here. Let's go to the start of the round and let's break down some of this gameplay. Now, remember, this is going to have as many tips and commentary as much as possible. The Alter gameplay will have audio. This one, since it was done live on stream, I'm going to remove the audio to avoid having too much of a mix-up between my own voice and the gameplay voice as well. One of the most early tips is make sure that you land pretty aggressively on the loot that you specifically want. In the current season, especially in the new map, it can be pretty hard to look for loot because the buildings and everything look and feel so different compared to, I guess you could say, World's Edge, KC, and every other map. The building structures are unique to their own and they feel difficult to understand where loot is at. So I always recommend, one, why you want to land on the pillboxes, because they almost always guarantee, oh no, they guarantee a gun. Not the support one or the assault bins, but just landing on a normal bin will always guarantee you a gun off the drop, which is a good thing. Now, especially even on this, POI street market, going through every area will give you a pretty good amount of loot. Now, you're probably asking the question, is Akimbo good? I prefer the Mozambique, so you just saw me drop the Akimbo for P2020. I don't really like the P2020 as much, specifically for damage. I'm looking for anything I could do for mid-range, and it better be pretty much best in slot when it comes to close range as well. So the Flatline is a really strong loadout, the R301. I mean, the Havoc is always really good. Dual wielding the Akimbo for Mozam, Mastiff, anything that you feel most comfortable with. Those are just some of my suggestions of what I will use. Now, you don't always have to fight right off rip. You'll notice in this gameplay at the start, we're pretty much taking our time looting, getting as many resources as possible, just to ensure the first fight that we do take that we are efficient. Now, if you are fighting right off drop, that's why I recommend the bins, and be very quick in your loot rotation. Everything you should do, it should feel like you're speed running. If you don't know what a speed run is, that is where you probably saw games done quick, where you try to finish a video game as fast as possible. Remember, when you're playing a battle royale, there's only a certain amount of time that you actually have slotted until the end of that round. No matter what, towards the end, the round is going to end. And what you do within that time span is really up to you and how you maximize that time. So making sure you're going to the right places for loot and that you are as efficient as possible and that you're ready to fight. So let's say we dropped off the cuff there and we needed to fight. Well, I already had guns and was ready to go. Now, you could spend as much time looting and spending all that time in the world at a POI, but at some point you do need to move. Here's another really good tip, especially when it comes to rank. Let's say your teammates don't move with you. Well, the best tip I can provide to you, especially because you want to get damage, right? There's no damage done, and yet this round is going to be a high damage game, is that you need to at least do damage and create an opening, and it'll incentivize your teammates to move towards you. This is a really great example, and we actually even said it during the live gameplay. If you want to go back, I will post it in the link down in the description down below from the full VOD. You can check it out so you can hear my comms and everything. I also provide a separate line of tips, but this is specific as well, is that once you start doing damage and start cracking, you'll notice that my teammate starts moving. So once you start doing that type of pressure, it's noticeable, and that pretty much incentivizes your teammates to move with you. Now, one thing to always keep in mind is that you just can't keep barreling into a fight. Aggression comes with being able to have good resets and being fast at resetting. So you'll notice there that I backed up immediately and then I reset. Now, the reason I'm finishing this opponent, finishing opponents, it can also give you more damage, but two, ensuring that they don't res. And then three, so you have an armor swap if needed. So that's also that added benefit as well. Being able to do mid to long range pressure is really important, as well as close range. You can't ignore any one of these categories when it comes to Apex. You can be great at close range, but if you're great at close range and that's it, then you won't be able to maintain any pressure until they get close to you. And if only thing you're good at is mid to long range, well then that's also going to cause a problem as well. Now, you'll notice with me moving up as Wattson, one of the best things is make sure you use your utility properly. So I put my utility there and drop it down so that I'm able to get healed and maintain. It's like, I always think of Wattson as like a linebacker, somebody that you can push forward and maintain pressure. Let's say I get cracked here, right? I'm still healing. Look at the bottom left and notice that my HP is still going up despite, not having to have the ability to fully reset. I still had at least a cell given back to me. That's using Wattson's utility, make sure that you're maintaining pressure. Even though I'm out of the fight, I can still re-peak and still have more HP given back to me. That's the same thing with Lifeline, or like if you're Pathfinder, Grapple and Reposition. If you're Mad Maggie, you throw your ball to maintain pressure, to mitigate damage. If they're hiding behind cover, then you make sure to get them out of that cover using a Maggie drill. Just some of the examples of some of the legends that we currently see on screen that we're facing off against. So your utility is also going to help dictate how much pressure you're able to put into a fight. And making sure you're not afraid to take shots. That's a good example right there. So the example of the wall, even though I don't know where they're at, I'm guessing some of it landed, some of it didn't. And you're going to see me whiff here in a second. You have to take your shots. For you to do damage, you have to shoot, unfortunately, or fortunately enough. I think a lot of players, I've been noticing a lot, even in the revival game mode, is that some people just are afraid to fight early on. And there's no reason to fear it because you're just going to respawn anyways, especially with the timers so quick early on. Don't fear missing shots, because every little bit of damage that you do, even if you spray a whole magazine and you only land 40 damage, that's still better than 0 damage and maintaining that pressure. And I'll give an example here because I was extremely uncomfortable here and I whiffed almost everything. Let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at the meme that occurred here. We push in, I lost my 1 here. And this is just a mechanics check. It's okay if you miss, because sometimes you just have those games. I whiffed so hard, and then I ran back and didn't know that was there, and then I just died. Awareness, right? Know what's in the area. That's a mistake I'm even making here. Luckily, my teammates cleaned it up. The spray just wasn't good. It wasn't clean. I overflicked multiple times. I need to slow it down. That was another tip. If you need to do damage, just slow it down a little bit. Go in the range and practice that back and forth, and I promise you, you're going to net out so much better results. The problem that everyone has is they think these encounters are super fast and scary, and the pressure is there because you only have 1 life. In Revival, you can keep respawning, so practice it. You'd be surprised just how smooth of a movement you can create if you just breathe. And that's probably one of the biggest problems that most players have, especially if it's not a game mode where you're just constantly respawning. There's that added pressure. So just work on that. That's another big tip. So consistent 4K damage and maintaining pressure. Another thing you're seeing here is I'm looking for where the opponents are at. I didn't just stay inside and kept looting to keep damage up and getting more kills, because this could have been a 20 bomb. Maybe I think the only thing that would have changed this is if we dropped hot and then I had some pressure, maybe we were contested off drop. That would have been a lot better, right? So every little bit matters in terms of pacing of the round. So we know that teams are fighting here. We look for it. You know, you take height, look around. If you get pressured off of height, then you know to hunker down inside of the building, and then you get ready to wait for the moment to strike, essentially. And there it is. Now we're getting the damage back in. Remember, finishing knocks, yeah, it can help you pad that damage because technically it counts towards it. Now, here's another tip. Don't obsess about always going for a finish. That happened a later time during the stream where, you know, teammates try to go for finishes, but they're not finishing them in a timely manner. And then there's a time to finish an opponent and there's a time not to finish an opponent. If you notice that there's a lot of pressure near you, then it's not time to finish an opponent. Let's say I'm being shot at or somebody's hurt or damaged, then there's not the time to go for the finish, essentially. Or if you're near full HP, there's no benefit because you're not going for an armor swap. Notice there, I didn't continue blasting. I went to go for the reset to heal my opponent and also dropped a generator. Your teammates are vital to keep your damage up because they're also helping you maintain pressure in these scenarios. Even if they're not doing a whole lot of damage, or even if they are doing a lot of damage, them doing damage isn't going to take anything away from you, especially if you're going from encounter to encounter. The goal is to constantly be in encounters. But even if your opponent is missing, they're still a body and they're taking focus away from your opponents, which is very important. You want them to pull that focus. So it's important that even if you reset for your opponents, drop them armor, use gen, help them out. I could have dropped armor. I think I even commentated that I could have, but I just went directly for the res. And that's not a bad thing either, especially if I put my ultimate next to them. So there is that benefit. So be kind to your teammates because that's how you're going to get your high damage games and how you're going to get more consistent 20 bombs. Because it may sound weird, but if you have a teammate that is just atrocious, that's okay. That means that you can carry the weight and then get higher kill games because they're not necessarily going to steal all the kills from you, right? There's that trade-off, you know, use them as meat shields essentially. But of course you don't want teammates to the point where they don't maintain at least any pressure. You got to find that balance. So I get also the other side of that coin as well. But looking at this, you know, we're scaling up slowly but surely, making sure that we have good angles. We'll take cover there. Even though it seems like we're snowballing consistently, we're not just necessarily always dropping. We're looking for information to make sure that we also don't get knocked. Getting knocked also means that you're not maintaining pressure and you're not doing as much damage. So we do drop here because I need heavy. You'll notice that I was pretty much out of heavy across the board, and now I have it. This is a nice, where it covers your body, right? You want to cover your body with as much cover as humanly possible when you're moving up from point to point, and that's ideal. So even as we're moving up here, we're looking around and we're scouting essentially. Now there's also the question you may be asking, I was like, well, in that scenario, it looks like you're just standing right out in the open. There's a time where you're trying to bait for damage, and then versus whenever you are simply just trying to make sure that you're taking as little damage as possible. You need information. If they start blasting you, you will drop immediately and you know where they're at. And that's information, right? You need to know where the opponent is at. And sometimes putting yourself out there for a little bit of bait and to get them to get excited to move up or make a mistake is key. That's what you're looking for. And of course, I mean, to be honest, the only way to do damage is by practicing your recoil control and then putting in the work with different loadouts to the point where you feel comfortable with it. If you don't feel comfortable with a specific gun or loadout, you got to practice with it. I would say ideally, I'm going to throw a number or percentage out there. You want to be comfortable with at least 90% of the loadouts. There are some that of course, you can 100% avoid. Let's say I don't really grab a car SMG anymore or a P2020 as much, but I know that there's always going to be some sort of loadout that I'm comfortable with on the ground nearby as well. So that'll help you out immensely. So you don't have to say I'm a master with 100% of the guns. Now, another thing you can do, you'll see here where I put the gen, but look at my passive healing while maintaining pressure. I'm still able to hold and showcase my body and presence. And even then, when I hopped in front of it, the bushes were blocking some of my cover, which is also helpful. And notice how even the cover I have here, at least a portion of my body is still blocked by some cover, rather than just running out blatantly into the open. So kind of maximize the time wherever you say, I'm going to run out in the open because I'm baiting for a certain purpose, or now I'm trying to hold and put pressure on the opponent. And those decision making happens really, really quickly. That's why when people watch, I guess you could say pro gameplay, I'm not saying my gameplay is pro, I can always improve, is where it's either now we have cover, right? We're not just standing out in the open, we have a little bit of cover. It's not ideal, and then you move up. It happens very quickly. So they have also pretty decent cover, and then you move up and keep maintaining pressure. I always say going from line to line to line, as if like point A, point B, point C, and point D, just to give you more of a visual. And then if you back up to point A, let's say point C doesn't work out for you. But, you know, again, you avoid knocks. It's always a positive. I'm baiting right here. I want to know where they're at. I want them to blast me. But also the zone is maintaining pressure on them. This is a rough situation where, okay, I go for cover, right? Because I know I'm in a bad spot. If I kept taking that fight, I promise you I would have went down. And sometimes you're forced into a scenario where you have to just stand out in the open. And that can be pretty uncomfortable. And those are the scenarios where you say, okay, well, what could I have done differently and to survive? And this was pretty close. I would have to drop another heat shield. Zone 3 to 4 is pretty massive, does a lot of damage. And then we're pretty much in. So you may be asking, what is better for maintaining higher damage, going to zone or playing edge? Both. You're going to see even in pubs towards the end game, I racked up probably an additional 1,000 damage just by playing end zone and then blasting from a distance. The downside, make sure you have the resources. You can't really go to end zone or not clean up an area and get enough loot, because you'll notice that how much ammo I'm burning through, and my accuracy, even though it's good, I'm burning through a ton of ammo, and I could have actually been a lot more efficient and dropped a lot more even. You always push yourself to get to that next level. So I'm playing ranked, change your pacing depending on your teammates. You know, sometimes your teammates are a little more aggressive, sometimes a little more passive. And sometimes the passive teammates will help you net out higher games, and sometimes the more aggressive teammates will help you get more kills. There's always a benefit, okay? So always look at it as like, okay, this is a positive rather than a negative, because if you look at the negative, then I promise your gameplay is going to suffer for it. I've seen it more times than not suffer. And if you are going to push, make sure that you at least have a fallback. When I play Wattson, I always try to put the fences. I use my fences more so less aggressive and more so as reasons not to push or delay an opponent. So there's different ways you can use fences. I tend to use them more for reminders of this is my space, respect it, rather than in your face. And there's no right or wrong there. I guess it's more or less awareness on what you should use them for. Like the fence at that door says, respect the space, you can't come through. Or I put the fences before, if I get shoved and run to that, it means that you're going to get delayed. These are fences to showcase presence so the opponent hesitates. And if the opponent hesitates even for a second, then you got a jump on them essentially. That's your goal. So I put the gen up here. We're getting a nice reset. We almost get knocked at one point. A little close, but the faster gen. So if you're asking in terms of perks, I guess for rank guide, always have the perks that you use for rank versus the ones that you're trying to dish out for aggression. So I'll use Wattson as a pretty clear-cut example that I'll go for the res perk and the faster regenerating when you're next to the generator versus the spawning arc stars, which is better for comp or if you're strategically holding with your team, and the other on the left side, which is infinite, you know, where the generator just keeps spawning more resources for you to use for infinite economy. So I opt for the faster one in this scenario. So think of your perks as well, like Pathfinder. We'll use that as an example of like what's going to be good for maintaining more pressure versus whenever you're more holding. So if you go for the recon perk, then you're going to find out where opponents are at. If you go for the grapple one where you push in afterwards, well, that's going to highlight more aggression versus the perk where you have less damage on zipline. Well, that's going to be great for rotation if you're trying to rotate either late or if you're trying to rotate from zone into a more ideal spot. Now, towards the end game is where you tend to wrap up most of your damage. This is where you're holding and you're mostly maintaining pressure, and then usually what wins games at a higher tier lobby. I know this is Silver 3, but considering this was very pretty much like the first day or two of ranked, well, this is Saturday, so first week, I guess so to speak, that's always the sweatiest that rank's going to be. I always say it's sweatiest at the start because that's when everyone's reset and everyone doesn't always have time to play right away. Maybe the Masters and Pred players will play later in the week. If they're racing for Pred, then they're probably doing it early on, and that's when the lobbies are absolutely chaotic. And this is more like fences for respecting space. That's what I like to use them for. You'll notice other Wattsons do other different things as well, like Lamek uses his fences more offensively as well for throwing and juking opponents, which also maintains pressure. So there's not a right or wrong there. Just different variances, right? And depending how you use gen, are you going to use it offensively? You're going to put it right next to you as you're trying to peek, or are you going to put it in the further back so you have it as a fallback? Neither are wrong. It just depends on your intention. So your intentions are really important here, and making sure that you push efficiently. Having opponents reset is not a bad thing at all. You just got to make sure that you're maintaining as much pressure and that the opponent feels it. You know what I'm talking about when a Pred player gets a knock and it seems like they're just right on top of you within a few seconds? That's the pressure we're talking about. When an opponent pretty much knocks you and you're like, wait a minute, nobody's pushing, and you have time to reset and you get fully healed, you're like, where'd they go? The pressure is alleviated. So you want to make sure you maintain that consistent pressure. And that's important. And sometimes, even if you're facing a good team, they'll be very standoffish, and you could try to find multiple areas. And this will be a really good example here that you're going to see where we try to maintain pressure, and I try to find an opening multiple times, but this ended up turning into another 800 damage just because it took a while to get them. So this opponent is isolated out. So it's okay to push it because I have my teammate nearby, so having the game sense of where your teammates are at, and I run up and I try to get this opponent out, and then boom, there it is, because I know my teammate's nearby. Now we're in the top 2 scenario. Go for the Kraber. Probably should have stuck with the Havoc, to be honest, because I did kind of whiff this a bit. I feel like the Kraber, especially with the Sentinel being so strong, the Kraber is not as strong as it used to be, which is a good thing and a bad thing, because I know sometimes the headshots are just pretty much too much of a game changer, essentially. But this was only a duo, and they did a great job because, okay, so that means that the person left could have wide swung that and got it, but they refused to move and do so, so therefore the fight is further delayed. I can't cross because there's also an opponent on the right, and I don't want to just throw my game and just die for free, right? So as you keep scaling up and moving up, that gave me the opportunity to move up because the other person wasn't peeking, and unfortunately I just kept whiffing, and that happens, unfortunately. Any one of those shots could have been pretty much game-breaking, and then you'll notice what they do. Ready? They push me. I hit one for 140. But I don't take this, and I back up and reposition because I don't want to throw my game. So the minute you notice that you're isolated out and being pushed, because my teammates aren't near me, I back up and reposition to ensure I don't get knocked. And of course, I have the gen here as my reset, and I peek wide. You're probably wondering why I would peek wide. It's because I want to bait them out to peek, because something has to happen. You either want to bait that, but then even if I take damage, I have the generator next to me so that I can heal up. So using your utility to maintain pressure out and maintain damage is important. Most people just hide behind cover too much, and they refuse to mostly do anything, and that's the hard part. You'll see it with Alter and how I do it differently with a more, I guess, aggressive legend in pubs. But you're going to see still the similar outcome. You're going to see next coming up how we're going to maintain pub gameplay and how that can warm you up and train you to improve. even in ranked. I'd say you want to treat all of them at least with the same fundamentals. They do play differently in terms of rotation, but in terms of fundamentals and taking cover and when you take fights is pretty much all the same principle. So now what we're going to do, let's segue over to the pub gameplay, and we're going to lean into what works for ranked versus what is not applicable to ranked to help you build that consistent 4K damage. But if you're afraid of ranked, I think you're going to feel and realize just how much a segue is over. So let's get into that next. All right, now for this next gameplay, this is pubs. We're going to highlight, though, it's very important. It's like seeing both ranked and more pub gameplay and how they can be similar but also different. And we're going to highlight that fundamentals. The same fundamentals, dropping hot, dropping near a bin. And yeah, there's a lot of opponents here, and this is going to get your damage up, and it's going to help you. You're going to see me get knocked and get eliminated a lot. So the new game mode is probably one of the fastest and easiest ways to get a 4K and 20 bomb than it ever has been. But, you know, see how fast I was pretty much ready to get into the fight and get into the encounter? And you have to be pretty much comfortable with those loadouts, and waiting for the bubble is pretty important here. But you have to be fast. And the earlier one with ranked, that was actually done with solo queuing. This one was playing with friends, and so you're going to see also the difference as well. So you can do both. Both are achievable whether you're playing with randoms or whether you're playing with friends. If you're playing with friends, sometimes they can limit you because then maybe they're going to be better or they're not going to be better, whichever way you want to look at it. And then when playing with pubs, you never know what you're going to get. It's like a box of chocolates, essentially. But you'll notice, especially with Alter, we do have a close range and mid range. Love the dual Mosaims. They're really strong and maintaining a lot of pressure. And even then, I guess the best tip even there, if you want to keep getting more kills and eliminations, one thing you're going to see me do a lot on Alter, because I did also want to just kind of pad the damage, is you finish all the knocks. But make sure you do that in a smart way, like we had mentioned earlier, that you're not griefing your game just because you're like, oh, I want to make sure my damage looks good. Because I know there's a lot of individuals like, well, I did a lot of damage in that fight. Make sure you're doing real damage that's effective like you're seeing here. Make sure that you're actually getting real knocks and that you're actually maintaining real pressure. And whiffs can happen. That's perfectly fine. I think the biggest thing that you're going to learn from here is that, yes, a lot of damage, a lot of kills happen, but everyone misses, everyone whiffs. It's just maintaining a higher level of consistency is what you're looking for. So we've already got a lot of kills right off drop here, which is really good. And sometimes when you have these gameplays that are really hot off drop, they tend to slow down as well later. And that mid game can also get pretty slow. But even then, we're still holding, we're getting more loot, especially with Alter, using the abilities. I always try to hold as much ammo as possible. And the reason why is I know in this game mode is that you burn through a ton of ammo. It goes by really quick. Just as you saw with the flatline, even in ranked, I must have burned through probably at least, I'm going to ballpark it. Somebody's going to give me a more direct amount, but I could say probably at least 700 bullets at least, right? And even my sprays there could have been much better, to be honest. You can look back at your gameplay, and the best advice I can always give is be truthful and honest about your gameplay. The more truthful and honest, even though because you're never just going to always be the best, there's always going to be something that you can fix and improve upon. And so if you always take that approach, not to be a negative individual, but if you look at it and say, what kind have I done better, then you'll always be in the step in the right direction. Just be sure that it doesn't turn into a negative energy to where you're just constantly saying, oh, I'm horrible, I'm horrible, I'm horrible, and not improving anymore. Notice how we're kind of just in this one area too. There's a lot of almost holding. I mean, even though there's a lot of fighting, I can still shove, but there's still a lot of people landing nearby. So it kind of highlights with rank the importance of holding. So I'm going to highlight that here in the gameplay. Even though it's pubs, holding and resetting is still always a fundamental. Holding at a spot that you know is safe. I mean, maybe I could have gone underneath instead, right? Instead of backing up into the fans, so going into the underneath area. So every one of those gameplays, I took too much unnecessary damage, and where I defaulted to was a little too far away, and so therefore I got eliminated. You can always blame and try to blame outside factors, but it's best to take the approach and say, what can I do differently in this scenario that's realistic? Because there's always, it's a battle royale, there's a lot of variables, but there's always saying, I should have taken this other way, or I should have healed closer here, or I should have popped this cell immediately behind this cover because I wasn't getting pressured, or I should have looked to see where opponents were located. Or I could have ported away. I did have my tactical, right? Did I have my ultimate ability? Did I have grenades to put pressure at first? All that's important, and that could have led me to a higher kill game and maybe getting a 20 bomb as well, even more damage. I mean, hey, 4,800 is a lot, but wouldn't it be nice to have 5,800, 6,000, 7,000? You know, let's not stop there, right? The opponent here pushes without much information, gets knocked. That's a mistake that I used to do a lot with Vantage. Make sure that when you're pushing in, you know what's in there or what's going on, right? There's no reason for me to finish this knock. I was padding it for damage, but I just keep going for it anyways because I don't really know what else to do in that scenario. Might as well pad the damage, I guess. Get a little more light, and then I can go for the batteries inside. So loot is, as you'll notice that you'll get more loot the more eliminations you get, and a lot of players tend to make the mistake thinking, oh well, if I need to go actually physically loot, and sometimes thinking, well, if we win this fight, imagine what we can get off of them, and that's another positive way to keep the engagement and justify why you want to fight. Because if we don't get this fight, we need their resources, because otherwise zone is going to be too small, and I guarantee that there may not be loot. Now, another benefit is that the loot bins do reset after zone too, so there is that. But I encourage players to be careful about looting too much, because then you don't maintain as much pressure in ranked, and your damage is going to be lower, and you won't be as consistent in having teams stave off. I'm going to use probably a little, it's going to be a curse word, but I'm going to censor it. You want teams to respect you and F off. That's what you want an opponent to do, is that you want them to respect you and you want them to pretty much, you know, get away. Like, that's it. But we, of course, we censored it, so no issue there. But armor swap, and then keep pushing. Maintaining pressure, right? Went for the quick armor swap. That one had justification behind it. That one wasn't just doing it for the sake of doing it. There we go, and then you get the knock. Let's say, for example, this person healed, and I just decided to go in, then it's possible that I could lose my one. And it's important that you maintain as much of your health and HP and go for armor swaps instead of having to use as many batteries, and that's how you can supplement with cells and decrease the downtime that you have from not dishing out damage from taking height or doing anything else. Now, towards the end game, you're going to see how it resembles more ranked. At the start here, there's a lot of running around. And to be fair, I really think, honestly, even in the ranked match, we were kind of running around quite a bit as well. Because there's a lot of cover on this map, and the maps that don't have cover, you have to find those better points of interest. That's pretty much going to be your goal. So the reason why we're scaling up and moving up, there's several reasons here. One, we're outside of zone. Two, we did damage. Because we did damage, we can scale up and move up on this fight. That's a big benefit there. Vantage loses her pressure whenever you're close range. Go inside and go look for, oh, right on the stairs, and I lose track of them for a second. But that pressure, right? Maintaining the pressure. Now, look, we now have a new isolated 1v1. Sorry if I hit my mic there. But now we have people running away. Now, I don't know if I take this up. I do, actually. And I decide not to because there's fences, and I don't know if there's two up there or just one. But I don't want to throw. But I can take my port to kind of scare them or surprise them. But I can always take the port underneath back, which is a good use of utility to get you an angle. Let's say I ported right on top of them, I would take it right back down immediately, because you don't want to just face plant against an opponent. They have better positioning than us, but we're dishing out more damage. And I kind of panic here, and I do drop because I'm going to use my port to get underneath them and take an angle here. That's when you start using your legend utility to maintain pressure and your damage. Because I can't do that as Wattson, but with Wattson what I would have done is put the gen down, and I go right back because I realize that, well, wait a minute, I'm going to get focused by everybody. But guess what? I come right back up when the focus is away, and look what I can do. Boom, right? With Wattson, I put the gen in the back and then maintain pressure and heal. But with Alter, I can continue to poke and prod and keep going right back in consistently. And I get my teammate back up because I know they can't get back up at this scenario either. Now, it is kind of unwise for me to peak with as low as damage I have, because honestly, I could have gone down here. So I want to, again, put the importance of making sure that you put as much emphasis on resetting and healing. It's really, really key, because you want to be full HP across almost every encounter. If you have teammates, communicate that you're slowing down, so they know to slow down the fight and not to maintain as much pressure. Now, in this scenario, I'm opting not to heal up the last bit of syringe because I do have a still large effective health pool, but I do know that it's important that we kind of pressure this team out. So decision. I tried to use the port. Oh, I actually got him out there. It was actually pretty sick. I think I was going to get that. I was about to say, I thought I whiffed it or missed it. And the zone is closing. So 2 to 3, you'll notice at some point you have to say this is no longer worth it anymore. Go for the finish and then just leave. The zone will do a lot of work on you, whether you realize it or not. So make sure that you respect the zone, because you also don't want to get gated. Getting gated is probably one of the worst things that you can run into. and that'll cost you a lot, especially in ranked. Same thing. At some point in pubs, a lot of people make the mistake. When you have these high kill guns, imagine you're still fighting in zone and you rotate late. What's going to happen? You get eliminated, you get dropped, and that's pretty much it. So that's also very similar to just ranked in general too. Zone priority at some point. At some point, even whether the ranked gameplay starts up fast or slow, you got to respect the zone. I just realized Mirage had a health pool there. I remember most people were saying Mirage doesn't have a health pool. Why did Mirage have a health pool there? What was that about? That was interesting. Oh, because it came out of the Wraith port. That's why. I answered my own question. I know now. Knowledge is power. So we got the Void Nexus here to kind of reset. Resetting power, whether it's using your utility to keep up, whatever utility you have, whether you have port to run to zone. It's the same thing that happens in ranked, the same fundamentals. Let's say that you are rotating late in ranked. Do you have a Wraith port? Do you have an Ash port? Do you have any utility to get you to rotate around? Can you do a fast reset? Can you put a wall up as you're moving forward? What do you have at your disposal to get into the zone without having to get too hard gated? And getting gated is probably the worst thing that can happen. Spoiler alert, we die at the end of this. I mean, it has a lot of damage, but we lost. I would say that this end zone was even sweatier than what we saw in ranked, to be honest, which is to give you the confidence that even in ranked, I mean, you're going to run into similar scenarios and situations, which is pretty interesting in pubs and towards like the end game where it can resemble ranked. So if you can do that in pubs, I promise you can go into ranked and you can do it. Don't sell yourself short. A lot of you are a lot more talented than you give yourself credit for. Every time whenever I am coaching, it surprises me every time that most people lack more confidence rather than the skill set to actually win. They just don't believe that they can do it. Just see how we're getting gated here? This is stuff you would see in ranked, right? And then when you see the end zone of how much damage we are able to dish out towards the end, realistically in pubs, we could have taken that fight. It would have been a little tight. The reason why we don't shove that is because also these buildings are also really hard to push up on. And you have to be really clean and really efficient. And skill-based matchmaking can be really brutal. Sometimes skill-based matchmaking can be harder in pubs than it is in ranked. There is that to throw out there as well. So, you know, take everything with a grain of salt, have some faith, have some trust in yourself, and try ranked. You know, I really believe, I'll reiterate it again here, that a lot of you are much better and can be better in ranked than even in pubs. And you can still see that same aggression from both the gameplays. Sometimes you have to hold, sometimes you have to push, sometimes you have to do both. And sometimes you have to scale. It really depends, but if you have the same principle, then you can apply it to both your gameplays and whether you're in pub or ranked. Because even if you're in comp, then you would just prioritize more zone, but you still have to do the same thing. I want to highlight, I said that multiple times, take a drink every time I say highlight, emphasize, put pressure on the fact that holding height and telling a team that you respect my space is so important. That's what we talk about a true anchor. When we say anchor, you think of the steel thing that they drop off a boat. It's an anchor, right? It is immovable. You respect it. It stops the boat. Anchor. So the only way an anchor can be respected is by maintaining pressure and putting damage out. Think of an anchor as almost as important as an offensive player. Pushing forward. If nobody respects your defense, then guess what? Your offense is going to struggle and be all over the place. But if, you know, same thing, a great offense is a great defense is also a great offense. Look at it from both sides, right? So whether you're playing pubs or whether you're playing ranked, the principle can apply to both. But the key component, you got to land shots. Let's say if you're holding the roof of a building and maintaining pressure and moving around and you don't do any damage, guess what? They're going to disrespect you and move up. It's another ranked tip. And if you push up and you're close range and you whiff a lot of your shots, they're just going to put you down. That's pretty much it. And there's still a lot of teams actually alive. And you'll see a lot in this game mode that are alive to where the end zones can be quite fun compared to probably regular pubs where everyone just dies out. Because at least there's a higher probability of most teams being alive. And most of the teams are going to have pretty good armors by the end as well. It's hard to push out with Zone 4. At some point, even in pubs, you kind of have to respect, oh man, get caught out there and reposition. Because you know that the fight isn't worth it. Another tip for ranked and tips for even in pubs. At some point, you got to put your ego aside and say, this isn't doable. Right? Set aside your ego and say, I can't win that fight. And that's okay if you can't win that fight from that angle. You find a better spot and then you take the fight again. So when you do that, it'll net you out higher and better results. I don't know whichever way to say it. It'll be much better for you. I guess the thing we can apply here is if you fail once, try again and go again in a different way. This end zone pretty much ends right here. And this is pretty much it at this point. Most teams are all kind of moving around. The zone is closing still. Most of these buildings get really hard to maintain and push. And we do shove this because we do clear our backs. You're going to see this, okay? So even though we have height, the same thing here. Ready? There's a reason to push. Go. Notice how there was very little delay. Maybe you could say it could be arguably a little faster. Bad port, by the way. I was trying to go for the one that said 20 meters. I screwed it up, but then turned into a positive here. At least I had height. And then we get this team out. Because guess what? We don't have to worry about this team later. And then all we have to do is just maintain height and put pressure back, because then this team doesn't, we don't have to worry about them later. This is what I call clearing your backs. It's going to be done in pubs. It's going to be done in ranked. But if this team, if you, at some point, you're going to have to deal with the team. You're going to have to deal with their pressure. So the best advice I can give is to get them out whenever, if you create an opening. If you get a knock right there, why respect them and then let them go for a full reset? Now they took our building, and so we decided to take another building. I mean, it's possible we could have shoved that building too. There is that. But we did also want to slow it down because I wanted to get a 4K. It actually ended up being more of a 4K. But you know what's the beauty of this? Is that you're about to see how the pressure when it comes to ranked. And also, I almost threw here. Know where your fallback is really important. Know your exits. That was really bad of me. So we'll talk about maintaining pressure because nobody moves here. These are the last 3 teams, but nobody moves until the final zone. And even though this is pubs, it actually plays out very similar to rank. Because you can't really shove, because if you shove the left, guess what? The right building is going to push you. And if you shove the right building, guess what? The left team is going to push you. And if the team pushed us, guess what? The other teams are going to push us. Towards the end of the zone, this is when things really slow down, whether you're in ranked or pub or even in comp, is that you know that the other team is just going to third party. So even if I get a nice clean knock here, they're not going to do anything. So why would you maintain pressure? Well, if I have the resources, try to burn their resources. You don't necessarily know what their economy looks like, but you want to maintain as much pressure. One, to tell them that you're not pushable and to respect you as an enemy team. And at some point, if you don't have resources anymore, then you stop peeking, right? But this gets me pretty much the high damage game. And I have plenty of bats to burn through. This team on the left, I guarantee if they got knocks on us and maintain pressure, there is a downside of it, is that if you hide for too long, or if a team gets a lot of damage and you, let's say I peek, but they crack me and knock me, and they notice that we're a weak team, there is that chance that they could show a lot of disrespect and move up. There is a chance that we could have ash ported right on top of them and clean it quickly, and the team on the right, because they're not showcasing any presence whatsoever, we could say, okay, well, the team on the right isn't doing anything, and that's when you start reverse engineering things. And the biggest tip I can provide to anybody also in ranked is that you start saying, okay, what is it? What team is dangerous versus what team is not dangerous? And then you'll start saying, well, this team doesn't want to maintain any pressure, meaning that if we run up to them, either they're beast at close range or they're scared. Because the team on the left isn't doing anything. The team on the left over here is doing something. The team on the right is doing nothing. So the team on the left is the one that's doing all the damage and wanting to fight. So if they were to get a knock, they're probably more likely to push. And so we got a knock. We probably could have ash ported onto it and cleaned it up because the team on the right isn't doing anything. This is what I would call a misstep, right? I definitely could have calmed it. And if nothing happens, then it's, I guess we could just blame ourselves, right? You can always look at stuff hindsight 2020 because we end up losing this. And I guess the reality is that the zone pulls towards us, and I thought that these teams were going to run more into each other. But if we just pushed onto the left and ash ported right over to them, then I think we probably could have netted out a win because the team on the right isn't doing anything, right? Meaning that even if we went in and reset, I think the team on the right would have hesitated and been late. That's my theory, rather than having all of us just be on top of each other all at once and then just have it be a squabble for the end game. That's probably the one thing I would have fixed right here. Because that was the moment, to be honest. And that's good information. I mean, that's just pretty much how you VOD review and you look at this. Otherwise, the pressure is good. They start getting more confident towards the end. The reason why is they know they have to maintain pressure. So if they're not peaking, it could say several things. One, they don't have any resources and they're low. Or two, they're scared. Or three, they don't want to get cracked on the rotation, I guess. You know, it throws many different variables and asks yourself the question. And you can ask those questions in real time, whether you're playing pubs or ranked, and what they're going to do. And at some point, you'll notice that I stopped peeking as well. That was a mistake by over peeking there, and I got hit by another opponent. Now, they would have grenaded at this point and maintained a lot of pressure, but they didn't. So, because of that, we got nothing to worry about. And then we get to the end game here in pretty much just a second. If you enjoyed this commentary and this was helpful seeing a comparison of these damage high kill games, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I hope that this was educational, informative. Hopefully there was a lot to learn. Probably could have held it more on the top here. Go for the swap. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at this mistake if I more of them I make. Probably didn't need to drop right away. I think we had a little more time. Maybe. I think I got a little overzealous. Yeah, I did. If we just waited just a little bit, holding here, this is too early of a drop. Maybe. Honestly, I think the biggest mistake looking earlier was getting the knock early and not acting on it. Because we knocked the other team. There's a knock there, but it just wasn't as clean. So the biggest mistake when we go all the way back was not pushing on the knock that we saw here. And if we did push on that knock, then that would have been the world of a difference right there, yeah. This knock. Because this team is the more dangerous one, and they're the ones that, towards the end of the gameplay there, they really rocked it. And I think they're the team that ultimately won. And we had, what, 4,900 damage, actually. Yeah, it's the Pathfinder team. They're the team, because they're not the Wattson team. They were the better team. And so looking at them, they were the dangerous team to kind of keep out. So, hey, look, a lot of us did a lot of damage. The new game mode's easy to do a lot of damage on, which is a good thing. But you also see we replicated also in ranked. Thank you guys again so much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you want more of this content. Hopefully it was helpful. Hopefully it helps you improve in your gameplay. See you guys all in the next one.